What's going on? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad everybody came in to this LinkedIn Live and so excited. Just curious, real quick, just let me know. Can you hear me? I want to make sure that the audio is getting out to everybody. Type a Y in the chat and that'd be awesome. Is there audio now? Let's see what's up. So the audio is working. We know technology's great. Oh, you hear it now? Perfect. Thanks, Sandy. Appreciate that. Everybody else, just want to make sure you can hear me as well. And so we can get going. Perfect. Thank you. And then just real quick for context, tell me where you're calling in from in the chat. Love to see what's happening because I know that we have people from everywhere, from California to Europe. And so it's just always interesting. Perfect. Good. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that y'all could take time day today, whether it's breakfast or lunch or, cocktail hour or coffee hour. I'm really excited to be here because I think we're going to share some things that are fantastic. Bahrain, California, London, Seattle, Washington, D.C., South Africa. Man, I love this. Thank you all for tuning in from all across the world. So I'm super excited about what we're going to do today. We're going to talk specifically about a process that we've used to help create about $4 billion in market value for some privately held companies. That doesn't include the publicly traded companies that we've worked with. And what I think you'll get out of this is this process is going to give you a systematic way to think about growing sales within your organization. So real quick, to make sure that I can put the context to it appropriately, tell me real quick, what's your role in your company? What's your position within your company? And we'll let you see that. All righty. Okay, cool. Here we go. So let's jump into this. I want to make sure that we're in and out of here in the time frame that I've promised. And so in order to do that, we need to get after it. So that's what I'm planning on doing right now. So we're going to share with you, like I said, it's something that we use called the Ultimate Sales Team Blueprint. And it's called the Sales Alpha Roadmap. A very specific set of steps and remedies to take, say, an underperforming team and make it somebody who's a world-class team, or to take a team that's performing at a high level and to continue to drive their performance. And so you think you're really going to enjoy what we have to go through today. But first, let's talk about this. The first question that you have to ask is, well, who's this workshop for? So it's awesome to see some CEOs and some sales managers and others here. So let me talk it through real quick. This workshop is going to be best absorbed probably by one of three different types of roles or personalities within an organization. So the first is if you're in the C-suite or executive leadership, right? You're trying to set the vision for where the company should go today. And it's a little bit harder than it was just 2 years ago. And who'd have thought you could say that? Because we had the pandemic, which was supposed to be really crazy, but businesses tended to do pretty well. Now we're in a rising interest rate environment, and you may have some questions about what's the best way to think about where we're going. Second, if you're a sales manager or a sales leader, you're a CRO, you're a VP of sales, you have a team of managers maybe that are managing individual contributors, or you're managing individual contributors. You're trying to figure out how in the world can I put a systematic process in place so I can get out of just being in every meeting and get out of the idea of all the fires that I'm in. I'm going to bet statistically that many of you who are in sales management find yourselves in so many meetings that you can't actually manage, coach, and lead your teams. So if any of you have this overwhelm of meeting fatigue, give me a Y in the chat, just because it'll be very interesting to see how that turns out. Next, a very important characteristic in some of the mid-size and larger companies that we've worked with is sales enablement. Your world has changed dramatically versus what it was just 2 or 3 years ago, because you're literally tasked with how do we arm the sales team, whether it's between marketing and sales or whether it's between sales and sales process. How do we arm that team in order to be more effective? And you have some headwinds that have come out of nowhere. All right, got to ask the question though first. Why are you here? Why did we have 550 people sign up for this? And here's the reason. Only 6% of CEOs are confident that in their sales team's ability to meet and exceed targets, right? So meet and exceed targets. And so what that really means is 94% of sales leaders, CEOs, 94% of CEOs are actually concerned and don't think that they have the right team or process in place to actually meet and exceed targets. All right, so why should you stay tuned? Well, you should stay tuned because I'm going to show you the exact roadmap that we've used to create world-class sales teams in under 12 months. That seems like a pretty big statement, right? What do we define world-class as? Market leaders growing market share. Because if you want to measure the success of your team, are you taking market share or are you giving market share away? So yeah, Nathan, 94% is a very big number. And so we need to understand that. So I want to let you off the hook for a second though, because for the most part, I want to tell you that it's not your fault that we're in this position where we have such a lack of confidence, but you have some challenges going on. So let me tell you what's happening. If you're an executive, right, you have a few things that have been happening. So over the last 2 years, only 50% of sales managers are in the same spot they were 2 years ago, meaning 50% of sales leaders have taken a new job in the last 2 years. Think about how much more difficult that makes it for you in your go-to-market. And I'm not sure, y'all, what's going on here with my the display, so I apologize for that. But here's the other one. So 85% of sales leaders are considering changing jobs if the economy doesn't turn around. So if I'm in the C-suite, what does that tell me? That they don't have a lot of faith in what's happening in their world. Last, I think we can say that 73% of Americans want remote work to stay in place, which makes it even more challenging for us to lead an organization. You get the Zoom fatigue. You get everybody's got to have a half-hour meeting to talk about something they could have talked about in 2 minutes in a hallway. Those types of things make it very, very difficult as an executive organization. So what's going on at the sales leader level? If you're a sales leader or you're a sales manager, what are the headwinds you're facing today? Well, first, the time that your sellers are spending selling is down 50% from what it was just a few years ago. You've probably all seen these statistics that say something like sellers spend about 38% of their time selling. So this is 24% of the time is only being spent now. So 3/4 of the time is being spent on other administrative tasks, pursuit teams, and other things. Next, remote managing. 58% of sales managers say that remote managing has been more difficult than they anticipated it to be. Next, turnover. In 2022, turnover is actually up 58%. Think about if you're a sales manager and look at your own sales forces right now. How many of your people have been with you for less than a year? We're seeing really, really high numbers that go from 30 to 50% of a sales force is turned over. Next, it's the second most in-demand job in the world. So as a sales manager or leader, people are constantly trying to take things from us. And so you're seeing that the reps are leaving when they don't have the support that they need. In addition, the experience levels are down, right? We have more people, smaller jobs with less experience. And the way that we've addressed that as sales leadership is by pushing quotas up. And so we'll talk about that idea, but pushing quotas up just because we said so may not be the best way to do it. Hey, Derek, I see you in there. Yeah, these are a hodgepodge of stuff from whether it's a HubSpot, Chief Sales Officer, or CSO Insights, etc. So there's probably about 5 or 6 different sources. All right, so what's happening if you're in sales enablement? Well, just look at this buying map. Gartner does a study that they publish just about every year, and was there were 8 people in every buying decision, whether your sales force met them or not. Today, they say that number is in excess of 11. So think about all the ways a deal can go sideways because we don't know who all the players are. Well, that's interesting, but as sales enablement, we're supposed to be arming our people with the right information, the right sales tactics at the right time. But now with the buyer trying to learn more before they ever interact with us, that time has been compressed substantially. Add to the fact that 70% of buyers don't want any face-to-face. So what does that have to do with sales enablement challenges? This is what it is. Your company's probably cut back on the amount of times they get your entire team together. Those great times besides an SKO that you can come together and really do some significant skills development, mindset, and training. What does all this lead to, right? Your seller's lack of consultative sales skill and the ability to create value is being exposed in their meetings. Now, the old days, you could have come to me and tried to sell me, looked over my shoulder and saw my Denver Broncos helmet for 8 minutes. And a really good relationship builder might have gotten away with that. Problem is now we can't, and times are compressed, and people are back-to-back meetings, and nobody has time for a coffee. So we're seeing that happen, which leads to a significant problem as a sales leader or an executive. It's making it almost impossible to manage the sales force. Manage them in a meaningful way where you're confident what's going to happen next. And part of the reason that occurs is this. We're spending a substantial amount of our time working on the actual symptoms as opposed to the causes. We're spending a lot of time trying to say, hey, make my seller a better closer, right? Make my seller, can they set another appointment with another trick phrase? Well, those are all just kind of the symptoms. The real root causes are there's a changing sales culture. We're in a time with remote work and other things where empathy is probably at an all-time low. And where when you think about your sales force, they want to be available to take their child to school at 9, want to be able to pick their child up at 3, and then they want off by 5. That's creating difficult problems. Failing sales processes. So if you're in a company that has a sales process that's been in place for a minute, when was the last time you updated it based upon the changes that we've seen in buyer behavior? What are you doing to manage and find out where the bottlenecks are in that process that are keeping your team from being successful? Also, your salespeople's beliefs, like their mindsets are either sabotaging or producing outcomes. Yet too often we ignore that concept. The change management, sales strategy alignment. We do this great evaluation in our audit process that has 19 questions on strategy, and we test that across the sales org. And the vast majority of time you find out that they're misaligned. When somebody says net or gross matters more than price, and then you put them into a position where you say size of deal versus this in a particular situation, all of a sudden people are making subjective opinions. And so you're seeing that that's not even aligned at the highest levels. And the last components are, we aren't doing any benchmarking and planning. Everybody's got the world's greatest idea, but we're not planning the specific steps that we're going to take. And in addition to that, now that budgets are getting tight, there was already a lack of meaningful sales training, right? I would argue that sales training and the sales training and consulting industry is largely broken and that we don't focus on outcomes as an industry. So we're going to show you a little bit of those types of things. So the first thing we have to do is we have to change our questions to the right questions. Most often we will get questions like, how do we sell more, Ken? And the real question is, how much more could you be selling? Think about how much more powerful it is if you have the data that says, hey, we could do another 28 million. That's going to help you get funding, get the support you need from your CFO, and tell you who's worth investing in. So we get a question like, how do we create more urgency for our prospects? It's not the right question, folks. How do we help our prospects understand the real value that we create? Because that creates compelling events and dates that allow the sales pipeline to continue to move forward. Last one. I hear this all the time from sales leaders. Hey, Ken, how do we get them to follow that process? Well, the right question is, do your systems and processes support a high performing sales organization? So there is good news. The good news is this, is that I'm going to show you a process that's the ultimate sales team blueprint called the Sales Alpha Roadmap. And I can tell you right now that by following this process, we've helped organizations and companies build world-class sales teams in under 12 months. And so we're going to jump into that because I think this is something that you'll find incredibly valuable. There are essentially three pillars. There are three steps that we take in order to do this. So the first, and honestly, folks, that's often missed is auditing. Because one of the things we have to understand is where is our team today? Where are our systems and processes today versus where we want them to be in a year? Because I'm going to tell you right now that since almost every seller under the age of 35 has never sold in a rising interest rate environment, and I'm going to tell you that sales were coming pretty easy for the last couple of years, they're going to have to be better in the future than they are today, and we have to have a plan. So that's first. We want to move from assuming about what we're doing to planning. Next, we go into an accelerating phase where we try to pick up what are the ways where we can start to make a meaningful change and little wins that are going to lead to much bigger wins. How do we pick up more strategic clients? How do we move the price point up of our deals? How do we make sure our clients understand the value and we decrease our sales cycle times? So we move into the accelerating phase. Oops, sorry, wrong button. And then from there, we go into the advancing stage. And we're trying to go from lagging indicators to compounding returns by being very, very intentional about what it is that we're trying to accomplish with our team. You'll see when we go through this, these are the things that may take a little longer to implement. These are the things that may take a little bit longer to do. So first, let's talk about the auditing phase. I think probably one of the most interesting things in our line of work is this. I think most oftentimes CROs and VPs of sales skip this. I think they skip the audit phase because they don't get a pure sense of where are we exactly today and where do we need to invest in improvements. So as an example, there are three components to this auditing phase. So first is the people. Now, it's not a 360 review, folks. That's not what I'm talking about. But the big thing that we want to understand is we want to understand not what's happening, because there isn't a sales leader or manager on the planet that I've talked to who can't tell me we're underperforming, we're overperforming, we're missing deadlines, we're having deals fall out. Things you can tell me what's happening in your organization. But unless you can tell me why it's happening in your organization, you don't know how to fix it. So when we go through this and we look at people, what we are talking about is how do they measure up on the 21 core selling competencies against 2.5 million other people that we've put through this process so that we can come up with the real whys. Why aren't they hunting? Why are the managers effective? What's happening? So we can actually address it at the root cause. Next, I mentioned it earlier. Alignment is such a critical component, but where it really gets tricky is when we go from individual alignment to actually moving to where that alignment creates team synergies. If you've seen our newsletter, Driving Traction, we've recently put some stuff out that talks about that idea of moving from an individualistic, coin-operated salesperson and taking advantage of the fact that most of them are intrinsically motivated and that we can create systems around this to make this happen. Last, the systems. How do your systems look today? Because if you haven't made any improvements and if you don't have that regularly scheduled, how do you know your systems are still able to support a high-performing team? And when you don't have systems in place, we have a substantial amount of risk instead of the reward that's supposed to come from it. I believe 75% of a sales force's sales organization success is really based upon the systems and processes, because they free you up so that your people can execute on the art of sales. Whereas too often we say, oh, it's the art, it's the person, it's the individual hire. But that's not super scalable. So that's how we start off in our auditing phase. Now, what you can do next is this. Okay, let's understand the environment we're in. Rising interest rates, CFO taking on a much more prominent role in the actual business decisions of where the investments make. They've always had a role, but taking on a much more prominent role in whether or not budget's assigned. So we really have to be able to figure out, how can we accelerate out of the bottom? How can we accelerate from this moment we're in so that we can show some wins? How do we go from missing to exceeding? Those are the things we have to figure out. And we do that in these 3 phases. So one is, in the 21 core selling competencies that we measure, mindset has its own attributes because it improves and changes behaviors. So let me tell you this. If we're only focusing on skills, if we're only focusing on skill sets, your mindset may sabotage the deal. And let me tell you how that works. So one of the ways that can work is this. Let's assume for a second, and for those of you who know me, you know I'm not a swimmer, but let's assume for a second that in high school, that I was an all-American swimmer. So I'm really good. Then in college, I had a near drowning incident. Heart stopped, had to apply CPR, hospital, whole thing. And now today, I won't swim because I feel like I'm going to drown. I have the skill set, but my mindset is keeping me from doing it. So if you have something going on with your reps right now, and you know they have the skill sets to accomplish it, dig into their mindset, because I'm going to bet you there's something holding them back. So that's the first step on this. Second, we come to the skill sets. They have to have the right skill sets to move from novice to reliable. We want more than this, but what we want is a stable of B players with a few A players and the occasional C. We tend to find things are middle to lower half kind of weighted. We tend to get a large majority of people who are newer, less quotas. Maybe you don't have the sales onboarding system set up appropriate to support them to accelerate their success. But the skill set, do they know set the meeting and the next meeting? Do they understand what a great agenda in a discovery is and what the specific open-ended question is that's time boxed? So we start working with their mindset on one hand, and then we start addressing their skill set on the second. Third component in the accelerating. Recruiting. Interesting to me that when we talk to organizations, it usually takes a minute to get here. Because the truth of the matter is many of the ills in an organization can be related to the hiring process. Sales is a very different role to hire from than any other role in your organization. And this one stat tells you this. The turnover rate in sales is 3x what it is in other positions. I mean, think about that. It's 3 times greater than it is for your accounting, your software engineers, your consultants, your subject matter experts. So why do we keep putting them through the same process? Why don't we have a recruiting process that actually lets us see them in action, lets us see how they think and what they do? So one of the things we can do in the accelerating phase is make sure that you're recruiting and that you're putting a process in place. Understand this, though. A process is not a process just because y'all know what's going on. Because when was the last time you trained any of your sales managers or leaders on how to interview? When was the last time you looked at your job ads compared to the rest of the universe, because I'm going to tell you 90% of them all look the same. It leads with, this is how great our company is. This is what we expect you to do. It all looks rosy. Here's what we'll pay. But if you want to attract top performers, there's got to be a better way. Third, we want to advance. We want to move from lagging to compounding returns. Too many of the things that you actually put into place right now are this. That you put them into place, they have a limited impact, it works for 30 to 60 days, but it doesn't compound on itself to create scalable outcomes. So what we really need to do is take these things that take a little bit longer in order to move it so we have compounding returns so that we can grow our market share faster than the rest of our market. So in this particular component, first, you have to have frameworks. You'll notice before we talked about mindset and skill set, but where's the framework to apply the lessons? Where's the framework to do that thing? Because those are the things we need. We have the perfect meeting. We have our needs brief. We have our cold call matrix. We have these things because then the people know exactly what they need to do, exactly how to do it, and how to implement the training that you've given them. So we have to have frameworks in place. Next, the process. We've talked about it a couple times. The process has to be mapped to the buyer activities, to what the buyer's doing. The process has to be analyzed on a regular basis. Well, I don't care if that's every 3 months, 6 months, or a year, depending on your sales cycle, right? And the longer your sales cycle, the longer you can probably go in between checking those things out. But I can tell you right now, if you can't tell me your conversion rate between a discovery call and opportunity creation, or between opportunity creation and proposal, you can't tell me those metrics, it's awesome because that's something you can do today. You can start to work on those things and you'll find it to be helpful. Last, pipeline, right? I almost kind of giggle here because pipeline is the bane of every sales manager, leader, executives, and salesperson's existence. It's the thing that we're just like, as a sales manager and leader, it often looks like the rattlesnake that ate the rat. Like it's just this big mess in the middle. And in most companies, it's a best guess. So we have to be able to do a better job managing the pipeline. You can do that with frameworks like our opportunity to close roadmap, things that give you objective scoring on where the deal sits. But you've really got to get where your pipelines go from best guess to predictable. I was talking to a chief revenue officer of an 800-person company just last week, I believe it was. And the CFO got on a call with the sales force and the sales leaders. And the CFO said, the problem we have right now in spending money to help support you is that I don't believe any of your. Think about how powerful that is. So I can tell you this, here's how to measure whether or not your pipeline's in the place you want it to be. And that is this. Can you predict with 90% accuracy your sales over the next 3 months? Because that's how you move from best guess to predictable. That's how you get the rest of the organization to realize sales has earned a seat at the table. So when you talk about the sales team blueprint and you talk about our sales alpha roadmap, here's what it looks like when we lay it all together. And you can see how each of the pieces integrate and inform each other. And so you can go through this exact same process, trying to figure out how to get what's behind your people. And are you aligned? And do you have the systems in place? But once you've audited those things scientifically, we can lay out specific plans for the next 2 phases. And we can lay out specific plans of what you need to accomplish over the course of the next 12 months in order to move your sales team forward. So the Sales Alpha Roadmap is a fantastic way to build a world-class sales org. So what happens when you do this? Well, here's what happens. You go from a best guess effort over a coin flip of whether or not you're improving the performance of the sales team to a process rooted in the science of 33,000 other companies to improve the effectiveness of your team in your industry. We were asked a question right when we jumped on live, and I wish you all could have seen it. It was a great question. It said, is this going to be about sales in general, or is this going to be industry specific? Well, the great thing about that is the reason we can be somewhat industry agnostic in the process is because companies may differ between products and services, but the way that you grow and scale a sales organization does not. And that's how we do that based on 33,000 other companies. So what's the old way? The old way was this command and control style where we're demanding that reps produce more sales just because we said so. How many of you in the chat can say that you've increased quotas over the course of the last 12 months? Just hit a Y in the chat if you've done that. I think it'll be interesting because somehow we're not arming the teams with the types of, yet we're expecting them to produce more. Think about that. That argument basically says we hired the wrong people, they're lazy, and if we just put a bigger whip behind them, we can get them to perform. And that's just not going to get it done for you. So the thing where we get from that is we need to know how much more our teams can sell, how long it's going to take, and what's the specific plan to achieve it. All right, old way. We are hoping we hire the right people, but then what happens? We invest in them to the people who may never perform. In the new way, we know exactly who has the best opportunity to be successful and give them the time and the resources necessary. It's a great new world when you start to get organized like the Sales Alpha Roadmap. And here's what happens when you implement the system. You have a best-in-class sales org that's outperforming your competitors and growing market share. You feel confidence that every member of the organization is supporting another and that you'll be able to exceed sales goals. Your average day moves from putting out those fires that you're putting out every single day and spending all of your time trying to pull your C players up to spending your time with your top performers and creating a culture where more top performers want to enjoy. And then from a status perspective, when you move into this world-class realm, you're able to move your sales team up. And as a sales leader, you join the top 6% of other sales leaders. So it's a fantastic way to consider how you can go through your company, figure out a base level, how to accelerate it, and then how to advance it in a sustainable manner. So let me give you a couple examples of how this has worked in the past. So Stacey Henry went from being a CFO to CEO. So had much less understanding and knowledge about selling. Well, during the course of our engagement, we were able to increase their revenue by 485%. We took them from the edge of bankruptcy at 2.5 years of declining sales, and then potentially missing payrolls, to 3xing their monthly revenue in just 90 days, which led to a sustainable revenue growth. And that 485% happened over 5 years. So it was in and out year after year. Another example, Dave Jimenez is one of my favorite people because I love how honest he is. So check this out. So Dave's talking with one of our guys and he tells him this. Hey, look, sales leaders can be arrogant. We think we have figured out. We think we can be smarter and better than everyone else. There are a lot of things RevHeat does for us that we already know. But the real growth happened when I could finally admit that I couldn't deliver as fast or as effectively on my own. RevHeat solves real problems for us. The takeaway from that is when we work with our clients, we're not trying to tell you we know more than you, but we're that extension that let's actually be a factor of multiplies in order to help you produce better. And the last example I'll share with you is Millennium. Millennium increased their sales by 106% over 24 months. They implemented our sales talent acquisition routine, which has a 91% success rate in hiring people who will be in the top half of performers in their first 12 months. We did training and development for their sales manager, and then coaching their managers and their executive leaders. So then this story has gotten even crazier and they've done even more. But part of what we do with our clients is we're trying to get you to sustainable growth. All right. I said before at the beginning, a couple things. Got a freebie for you. Got something that I think you'll really love. It's essentially a sales maturity level checklist. And there are 5 stages to it, but you can get our sales effectiveness checklist for free. All you have to do is either message me checklist on LinkedIn. You can search my name, Ken Lundeen. If you're watching this on LinkedIn instead of YouTube or Facebook, I'm sure you can click through when we're done. But message me checklist, and I will get you this document so you can start to self-assess where you are based on how we've talked about it today. Right? Next, because you've come and you've taken time out of your life, we want to do something extra special for you. So if you feel like some of the things you've heard today resonate with you, but at the same time, it's a little overwhelming, or you're just trying to figure out the stuff about how to improve the performance of your team, I invite you to go ahead and get us a strategy call. Or set up a strategy call. Sorry, I was reading one of the things. Yes, well, I thank you, Rebecca. We'll share a link to watch this later as well. It'll be on the exact same page. So you can come in. There's a few ways that you can get a hold of me, and I will have the call with you personally as opposed to somebody else on my team. So 1, feel free to message me strategy call on LinkedIn. 2, here's my phone number. It's out there and happening. So if you like picking up the phone like I used to and still do, you feel free to give me a call. 3rd, email address. So you can hit me at ken@revheat.com. And this is the, kind of the easiest place to get to me outside of LinkedIn. But I'd absolutely love the opportunity to sit and talk with one of you, talk with any of you, like what's going on in your world, because there's so many ways to address it, but we can help you understand what does the process look like from start to finish. One of the things that's very different about the way we talk is we'll do this consulting call with you, but we're not trying to sell you on a long-term engagement, because the number one thing we have to figure out in the audit is there anything to do in the long-term engagement? We treat it very much like a doctor. It'd be malpractice to prescribe you medication or painkillers without an actual investigation and looking into what's going on. So yes, we'll share a link to watch this. You'll look for those. You signed up on LinkedIn. We'll share that via LinkedIn Messenger. So you'll see that coming through. But I really look forward to the opportunity to talk to anybody who just is trying to figure out what's going on in their sales organization. So we'll share this live with you all. It'll happen over the next 4 or 5 days because we can only send 100 messages a day. So you'll get the live and it will always be there. But I really appreciate you being here. Please reach out to me if there's anything that we can do for you here at RevHeat. And just like I always try to do, knock it out in 40 minutes. You got 20 minutes back where you don't have to jump on a Zoom call immediately. So thank you very much, everybody. Please hit me up. I'd love to talk to you.